what up? How's it going? And welcome back for another video. In today's video, I'll be showing you guys how I climb to Challenger every set, and specifically for this set, and how you can do that as well. So I'll be taking you guys through my methodology, my training methods, and how I manage my time, and how that can apply to you. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. Here we are on the table of contents, the intro, whatever you want to say for it. And I do want to say real quick before we get into the nitty-gritty of each of these sections is that the purpose of this video and what my inspiration for this video is what I would do if I was making this video for me. So this is stuff that is tailored specifically for me. Obviously you're going to be able to take some stuff from it, but I just want you to know I didn't make this with every player and every situation in mind. I made it for me, but I am someone who's hit Challenger 5 different times every single time that I've gone for it. And that's 5 out of the last 6 sets. The only set I didn't do that, I was very sick, and that's one reason why I didn't do it. So obviously you're going to be able to gain some knowledge from here, but I just wanted to be clear, this is tailored specifically for me because I only know my experience. So that's what we're sharing today. So with our sections, we have the obvious and what I would consider pretty mandatory stuff that you'll need to do is you need to grind and you need to spend a lot of time doing this. No matter how much time you have, it's going to be a lot of time that you're going to have to spend to it. But if you can't play as much as someone like I can, who's able to play this full time, you know, it's kind of like my job, then I have some time management strategies for some of you who have full-time work or full-time school that is going to prevent you from doing this. You definitely can still make your rank goals. It is going to be more difficult, but there are certainly people in high elo that are able to make it work. So I'll be talking about some time management strategies here as well, if that is you. Having a learning phase and a climbing phase, I'll get into the nitty gritty of that when we get to it. Practical stuff, learn the meta each patch, something you just need to do. Learn how to be strong on each stage. We'll get into that. I think it's probably something that that all the way up to even like high master, people still don't even know how to do. Learn multiple play styles and master a play style. And then the mental stuff, and I do want to just be forward with this, the mental stuff is going to be, to me personally, the mental stuff is 90% of the work. Just for me personally, just the problems that I have as a human, the mental work and like planning ahead and just doing my due diligence in the mental part of the aspect of the game is the most important thing and will be the most important thing that I talk about here, at least for me. So that's having mindset and training methods. So I'll take you guys through my specific training method that I use. I do kind of have an actual method. And don't play when you are not in the right headspace, and to not play scared, to believe in yourself, to know your game. So without further ado, let's just get into each section now. So obvious and mandatory time. In order to be good at anything, you need to spend time doing it and learning it. I personally play 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I watch 3 hours a day, 6 days a week. Now, obviously this is a very intense schedule, and this is actually not even what I would consider optimal. This is just what I have to do with my life. And, you know, I kind of, you know, these 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, 4 of those days I'm streaming during that time. So that's why it's so much like playing and so stringent. If I was actually not like playing this game for a living, and as kind of like a job, then it would be a little bit different. We'll talk about that here. So watch more than you play. So I would personally recommend, and what would be optimal for me would be a 70-30 or 60-40 split between watching and playing respectively, when you are in a learning phase. And then you just flip the ratio when you're in a climbing phase. So even when I'm in a learning phase, and we'll get into what I mean by learning phase and climbing phase in a few slides. But even when I'm in a learning phase, I still have to play more than I watch. It's just the reality of my life. But I would personally recommend when you're in a learning phase, watching way more than you're actually playing, and then just flipping that in the climbing phase, and we'll get into what those mean in just a minute. Okay, so the obvious and mandatory stuff. So some time management here for those of you who can't play as much as someone like me. So if you can spend as much regular time as me, then just do that. So find whatever works for you, how much you watch to play ratio, and when you're in a learning phase, when you're in climbing ratio, and just do it as much as you can, like how I do, which, you know, I play about, you know, like 40 hours a week pretty much. You know, I spend about like 50 hours of my time a week just thinking or playing the game. So if you're able to do that, then do that. Awesome. But if you're not, you don't have to do that. There's ways to like get around that. And so what if you have work and school full time? And so I'm just going to lay out a scenario. Let's say you have Friday through Sunday free. That's just your schedule. You work 4 days, you work Monday through Thursday and you have Friday through Sunday free. Boom, that's your schedule. And you want to be a high level TFT player, then this is how you can spend your time. And then this section, this is just going to be really focusing in your time. If you're someone like me who can play all the time, you obviously need to be focused and be engaged, but you can be a little bit more loose with your time because you have so much more time. But if you are one of these people, you need to be focused and you need to be making the most of your time if you truly want to be a high level player. This is what it takes. So let's say you're on Friday morning, consume as much TFT content as you can to learn the meta for that week. And what I mean by this, watch some streams, watch some comps list guides, stuff like that, where people make those. Check the stat websites to see if there's any outliers, stuff like that. And we'll talk more about that later on some of the specifics, but you need to learn the meta for that week. The meta in TFT, people joke about it a lot of times. It's just a part-time job keeping up with the meta. So the meta changes so much. So before you go into a big grind session, make sure you properly understand the meta. And the way you do that is by watching a few different high level players in your region. Make sure they're in your region because the game metas can be somewhat region dependent, it's just a little different. Okay, Friday afternoon and evening, grind as much as you can. So that's, grind for 3 to 6 hours, something like that. Play as much as you can. And then Friday night, this is the first night, we're going to reflect and watch some more TFT. So in the morning, what we're trying to do is we're trying to learn what is the meta, learn how we should be playing. In the afternoon, the evening, we're trying to apply that information that we just learned. And then and at the nighttime, we are reflecting on what worked and what didn't work, and the stuff that didn't work for us, we're going to watch some more to try to find out why it didn't work, because we tried to learn that knowledge in the morning and it's not gonna, and if it didn't work, and stuff is not always going to work, we need to find out why that was, because we thought we learned it in the morning, but I guess we didn't. So we're reflecting on that to reaffirm stuff that we did well and to find out the holes in the game that we have for that current patch or whatever. Okay, Saturday, we would spend that whole day grinding if we can. So we're gonna grind as much as we can. You can still watch, you can still learn if you like, but we don't have a lot of time, so we need to actually get some games in. So we're gonna just play as much as we can on Saturday. Sunday, we're gonna grind as much as we can again. But you need to have some time at the end to reflect and watch some more, because now we're gonna reflect for our whole week. That's basically our whole week is on our last day that we have our big grind session. And obviously, guys, schedule this however you need to in your life, but you need to reflect on what did we actually learn this week, what did we learn on this patch, what can we take to next patch, what are just foundational things we learned, like what are, a lot of times you'll get into a new patch and you'll learn like a basic game fundamental better, like maybe you learned how to play mid game better because this patch required you to play mid game a certain way, which kind of opened your eyes to a way to play mid game that you weren't previously doing that you can take into any meta. So reflect on things that you learned that are patch specific and are like game fundamentals that you got better at, and that can help you game plan for the next week. And then next week you just do the same thing, and you just try to build upon that each week, and you'll keep climbing up. You'll get good at each patch, and once you have that like wealth of once you get later on to the set and you have that wealth of you learned each of the patch, you'll start to see patterns that reoccur in other patches later in the set. So even if you just only learn the patch really well, that stuff will come right back later on the set and will come back in the next set. You'll be able to recognize things that are similar to the stuff you were doing on that patch. So that is how I would recommend doing your time management if you don't have a lot of time. Cool. And if you do have a lot of time, I'm essentially just doing this. I'm doing like the Friday. The Friday is like every day. So if you have a lot of time, Friday is every day. That you grind. So like, yeah, every day that I play, I do what I do on Friday. I do what I do for the Friday thing. Boom. All right, another obvious and mandatory thing. So here we are, have a learning phase. So I really like to, this is kind of like a mental thing. This is like a mental switch you're flipping. And so I like to have a learning phase and a climbing phase. So what are these? So in the learning phase, you don't always need to be climbing. In fact, I think it's difficult to improve at the game if I'm always worried about winning the game. If that is my only goal is to win the game or the top 4, whatever, I think it's pretty difficult to learn in that environment. Not always, but it can be. Let other players take most of the risks for you. That's why we watch streams. Yeah, that's the point of watching streams. Like, I don't need to learn that Corky needs a last whisper because I watched Robin do it 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean? Like, that's just an example. Like, what is the point of you practicing a composition all day when there are people that already play that composition perfectly or near perfect? They're going to be playing at a level that's better than yours. So watch other players who play the game better than you, because they will make the mistakes for you, and they will learn the optimal way to play, and they will take the risks that you don't have to take, because they are better than you at the game. So they're going to have a better like gauge of what is actually a risk. And like when they take the risk, they'll be able to take knowledge away from that better. So why not just learn it with them instead of take the risk yourself? But there are some risks that you do need to take yourself to get a real feel for the game. So like I'm trying to find a good example of this, but I'll try to use like the Corky Last Whisper thing. Like now you get into a game and you have a good Corky spot and you don't have a Last Whisper. And then you need to, so you get into a situation where you have to solve for that problem. But you watch the stream where the solve for that problem is, oh, you just run whispers. And that helps you get your Last Whisper because you can run Siphon Silas or whatever, Siphon Orn, whatever. Instead of like the standard frontline for a Corky composition, which is Itis. You can take that risk of, I've never ran that comp before, but I'm gonna take the risk because I need to get used to it. That's what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about like trying to redefine the meta by taking this big risk. I mean, being comfortable doing something you haven't done before. So you've never ran the Itis version or the Siphon version of the frontline, but this looks like a really good game for it. Take the risk instead of just defaulting to what is comfortable. But yeah, there's a line there. There's a line there for sure, and you need to find it. Okay, your goal at this time is purely to improve, nothing else. So LP does not matter. Win-loss doesn't matter. What is winning a game? Winning a game is learning something from the game. If you didn't learn something from the game, that is a loss. That is how I view the game. You know, every single game, you're just going in there trying to learn. If you win, you gain LP, awesome. If you lose and you lose LP, but you learn something, awesome. If you lose and don't learn anything, that is the worst case scenario. So just try to learn something from every game. Keep your mental in check so you don't get tilted. Because again, you are not trying to learn you're not trying to win. I mean, you can be trying to win, but the goal is not to win. The goal is to learn. So don't get tilted by win and loss. Keep focused, keep learning, keep grinding. All right, climbing phase. You start transitioning to this once you feel it click, and I feel like everyone knows what that means. Once you feel it click, man, you're starting to get better. And you start to climb naturally. You just start to see your LP going up even when you're trying to learn. You know, these games are just easy. These games are feeling easy to you. Let's switch to a climbing phase. You can always go back to learning, but the goal at this, or you can always be learning, but the goal at this time now is purely OP. So this is like, you know, you've gotten to a state into the patch where you feel like you really understand the meta. You found your spot there, and things are really clicking for you. Just focus on winning now. And then we can transition back to a learning phase once you hit a wall or start to lose without knowing why. So what I mean by wall is you could hit like a skill level. You could hit like, even if you do feel like you have a good grasp of the meta, you're focusing on climbing, you're doing great, and then like you hit a certain ELO threshold that your game fundamentals or your understanding of the patch just can't get past, and you're just stuck there getting win-loss, 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 just hovering at that. You're hard stuck. That's what's happening. You need to transition back to a learning phase, and you might lose a lot of LP when you do that, but that's okay because we're going to learn how to push past that wall. And this also is really important when you start to lose without knowing why, because that either means that you've hit a skill threshold where people have better game fundamentals than you, or you just have a fundamental misunderstanding of how to play the patch, or the meta has changed and passed you by because you were so focused on climbing rather than actually learning. So this happens all the time. This happens to me literally every single patch. I hit a wall. And I have to just like, all right, I got to take a break. And you'll see so many other high elo players. They'll just be like, all right, I just got to stop playing. I got to start watching some people play. And this is just what you need to do there. So having these two types of phases, I think is really important. It's very important for me, especially. All right, so here's some practical stuff here. Learn the meta each patch. And we already kind of talked about this a lot, but why do we do this? So don't try to define the meta. Just let the top players do it for you. I feel like we've talked about this type of concept a lot. You're not going to figure out the meta. Just let the challenger players figure it out, and they'll just define it for everyone else, and they're going to learn it so much quicker than you will because they're obviously play the game more than you. They're better than you. Just let them figure it out and just copy what they do. You don't just like, but you know, I feel like that's a negative connotation. Just copy what they do. Like, don't do it mindlessly. Copy what they do, but think about, okay, why is this good? Why is this good in this patch? Why is this good with the changes that were on the patch? Why is this good? Why is this good in the meta? Because a lot of times, like, things won't be so clear. You know, sometimes like something like scale scoring would just start being strong. You don't know why. And then it gets no changes or it gets buffed. And then the next patch, it's not good. And you don't know why. You need to figure out that why. So don't just mindlessly copy, but you should be copying and then thinking about it. For example, like with the scale scoring example, scale scoring was just strong. a lot of the time, and then the build just got optimized, and we're in kind of a reroll meta. So that's why Scale Scorn became strong at some point. It got no changes, but in the following patch, which is the patch we're on at the time of making this video, Scale Scorn is not very good, and that's because all of the dragons are meta. And you might be thinking Scale Scorns are good against dragons, but Show You is super meta and it does extremely well against melee units. All of Scale Scorn is melee, so therefore Scale Scorn is a little bit weaker in the meta now again. So that is like a reason why Scale Scorn was a little bit weaker. And if you don't think about those things, then you will not be able to like stay ahead of the meta or stay on top of the meta if you don't try to think about things whenever you like copy the high elo players. So copy them, but but use your brain a little bit. Okay. And you can find the meta by doing any of these things. So whenever you copy the top players, you can watch multiple. I like to watch multiple GM challenger level players in your region because that helps you to get a different type of perspective. You watch one player and they'll say like, this is giga broken. The other player will say it's useless. So I think it's really good to get multiple perspectives. Keep it in your region. You can watch other regions, of course. But when you're really trying to like learn like the meta, sometimes other things in other regions will be stronger than it is in this region because just the tempo of lobbies is just different. The way people play mid game, especially like stage 2, stage 3 is different from region to region a lot of times. So it's good to look at other regions to see like what is actually working. But just know that it might not be as effective in your region. Okay, watch comps list. So a lot of players will make their own comps list. I make a comps list on every patch that I feel like I'm really good at. So I'll post those as soon as I have either climbed all to LP or I feel like I just have a really good understanding. So a lot of players will make comps lists, so you can check those out for your favorite player. Use stat sites to look for outliers or differences from your anecdotal experience. So I'm not talking about using stat websites to choose your augment every game. If that's what you want to do, you can do that, I guess. I don't do that. I just pick them intuitively. But there is a limit to how much you can pick intuitively because sometimes I need to go check those stat websites. I'll check them like every day or every 2 days. I'll go and check the stat websites, and you can do this just before your big grind session to look for anything that is unusual to me. So like, what if something just has like an insane top 4 rate that I wasn't playing, that I didn't know about? Then I need to check that out and I need to figure out why that is. Or maybe like I think, maybe I think, I'm just gonna make up an example. Maybe I think Eye of the Storm is terrible. I think it's like the most useless augment to take ever. I'm just making this up. And then I go look at the stats and it's like 4.2, and that's pretty good on stats. So I need to figure out, so I'll see that and I'll go, okay, wait, why is this good? What scenarios in which this is good? And that'll teach me a way to find like other ways to play. So like maybe Eye of the Storm, Volibear is really good. So when you get Eye of the Storm, you should play Volibear. Oh, okay, that's why it has good stats. Okay, then I can figure that out, right? So I use stat websites to figure out outliers and stuff like that. And a lot of times I'll think an augment is terrible, and I need the stats to show me why. I need the stats to see that it's not terrible, and then I need to use my brain to figure out why. Learn how to be strong on each stage. So most players, all the way up to even high master, I said this earlier in the video, don't know how to play mid game. It's just like it is the biggest thing that gates people from climbing out of master. But like everyone below master also does this wrong for the most part. If they don't have a strong opener, so no one knows how to play mid game if you don't have a strong opener. They just greed stage 3 and stage 4 and just have no HP and no gold, or they play too aggressive on stage 2 when they're weak, and then they'll have no gold on stage 3, and we'll have no gold, we'll be weak, and we'll have no HP, and then we'll blame Mortdog and won't know why they lost. It's because you didn't know how to play without a strong opener, and then not knowing how to play without a strong opener causes your mid game to be horrendous. It's just a lot of reason why that is. So learning how to play stage 3 and stage 4 in multiple scenarios, like whether you have a lot of money, whether you are really have a lot of money, you're really weak, or in high roll situations. A lot of people only know how to play stage 3 and stage 4 if they're in a high roll situation, and it's usually because they make a lot of mistakes on stage 2. So really learning stage 2 through 4 is really important because a lot of players only know how to play when they have an advantage. So learning how to properly play around that will instantly give you an advantage in climbing. So doing that stuff is good. Okay, learn multiple play styles. The meta is, and one more thing I wanted to say about this actually is that this is something I had to relearn how to do. So I'm not just like talking on high and hating. So I took like 2 months off from playing. I just took a break at the end of 6.5 because that set was really veg. And then I was out of the country for about a month. And so when I came back, I actually forgot how to play with a disadvantage in the early game. I was just messing in my early game. I was pre-leveling like crazy. I completely forgot a basic game fundamental, at least the way I see it, is a basic game fundamental on how to play early game when you're at a disadvantage, and how to properly make your mid game better because of that, or how to play around that in your mid game. And then relearning how to do that is what allowed me to climb back up to, you know, GM challenger level, that sort of thing. So yeah, I just had to relearn that. So that's why I think it's so important. Every time I'm messing this up, it's like a basic game fundamental, and every time I'm messing it up, you know, I know it instantly hits me. You know, you'll see it in your game. You know, you won't be doing well. Okay, learn multiple playstyles. The meta is not always going to suit you, so you need to at least learn some level of proficiency of each playstyle. For example, rerolling, forcing, first or eighth style, or be like a top 4 consistent Andy. So learning all these playstyles are very important, because yeah, some metas, you know, sometimes the meta will be reroll meta. You need to know how to play that. Sometimes the meta will be forcing, where like this is when the meta is particularly bad, because this is when like 1 or 2 comps are the only ways that you can play, or one style is the only way that you can play. And so you need to learn how to min-max that style. I am very bad when the meta is like this. This is not something I excel at. You know, for example, a player who excels really well at this is someone like Delicious Milk GG, or just Milk. I think he just changed his name to Milk. Like Milk is like a really good player into this type of meta. He's very good at min-maxing builds. He's very good at forcing builds. He's very good at like manipulating the game to where he has the best chance of hitting the build versus other players. So he's really good at that type of style. I'm personally not. But I do try to learn it. Every set I try to get better at playing in those types of metas, because the reality is this game is very poorly balanced the first, you know, month to 2 months usually of a brand new set. So learning that style is very, very good. And then like first or 18, like how to really stretch your econ as much as you can. I wouldn't say I'm particularly bad at this style, but it's definitely not how I prefer to play. Like an example of a player who would play like this, which is like Soju plays like this a lot. I think he's actually a pretty well-rounded player overall, but he does really like this style of playing like first or eighth. I mean, everyone knows the Soju special. So like watching a player like that could help you learn how to stretch your econ as much as you can. And then being like a top 4 consistent Andy, this is how I prefer to play. I just enjoy it. And also it's good for LP games. This is just where like you just build good items in the early game, and I just let the game come to me. And I just try to play the meta comps, but I just try to build like really good items and just see what happens in the game. I prefer playing this way, you know, like a lot of people play this way, you know, like examples of like people I think are pretty well-rounded players would be like someone like Robin, someone like Socks, and someone like me I would consider to be a pretty well-rounded player. But yeah, so you can learn those styles from any of those people, but you can figure this out on your own. All right, now this is going to seem a little bit counterintuitive, but just hear me out. Let me finish it. Specialize in a play style. So I just let this come naturally to me. So as I said before, I would consider myself more of like a top 4 style player. Like I just like to build good items and play for placement. And I mean, I'll go for first when it looks like I can, but yeah, this is just how I like to play. And it just came naturally to me. I just got naturally good at making like creating boards, creating really strong boards in the late game, like out of nothing. Like it's just the way I prefer to play the game. So just let the way that you like to play the game just come naturally to you. You can evolve over time, obviously, but I like to just have something that I specialize in, and I bring all the other play styles up to that level, but I always try to double down on what I'm good at. So the value in mastering a play style is that this gives you a form of consistency. Every patch, I try to best effectively play my style, as that will usually be better than trying to play the best style at the time. You know, as I said before, I'm really bad at forcing. I'm just not good at that playstyle. It makes me unhappy to play that way. Like I'm angry at the game when I'm playing like that. I just don't like it, and I'm not good at it. So even in like a force style meta, you know, I'll still try to find the way to play my way. Because a lot of times playing the way that I play will still be better than me trying to play this style that isn't good. This style that I'm not very good at. But there's a limit to that, of course. Like, of course, sometimes balance won't allow you to do that, play your preferred style, but that is why we learn them all. So I'll still try to find my way in the meta, and it'll usually be better than me trying to force it. But if it's not, like if it's just not possible to play my style, then I'm just gonna have to play the game like everyone else and play forcing, right? But that's why we try to learn some level of proficiency, because I'm able to survive that patch, get to the next patch, and then start climbing when it's a little bit closer to a way that I prefer to play. All right, now this is the mental stuff. This is stuff that I think is the most important stuff for me. And here's my training method. I didn't come up with this. I was doing all this stuff like unconsciously. Like I didn't like devise it into a method. But then when I learned of Frank Shamrock, who's a retired MMA fighter, he had this specific method that he used for training himself and he used to train other fighters. It's called the plus minus equals. And so let's get into it. So the plus stage is to look up and to learn from others above you. They are at that level because they're at that level. You are at your level because you are at your level. It's as simple as that. So I feel like we've been talking about this throughout this entire video, but that is to look up, to learn from the people that are better than you. What is the point of you trying to figure out everything on your own when there's all these other people who play more than you, who are better than you, and are, you know, can interpret the current game better than you can. So that is just looking up to those players. And the other point of this is, like, obviously we need to learn, but the point of this is to teach humility. These players are better than you, and you just have to agree in your mind that, like, this player who is, you know, like literally 3,000 LP ahead of you is better than you, and they're going to know the game better than you at probably 90% of the stuff, right? And so you just need to be open-minded to learn. Every player that's better than you or high ranked, they don't know everything. Everything they do isn't gospel, but it is much better to just assume that what they're saying is correct. If you're diamond and the player is grandmaster or challenger, just assume that they are correct. This will help you. Obviously there's nuance to that, and you can dig into that nuance later, but when you're learning, just drop the fucking ego, man. Stop flaming the streamer or whatever. I know a lot of people just do that for fun, but like, if you're really one of those people who sit in like a challenger player's chat and you are like backseating them, whether you're doing that mentally or actually typing, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Like, what is happening? Unless you're just doing it for fun, which I get that, whatever. But if you're really trying to get better, like, dude, just drop the ego, man, please. Anyways, all right, sorry. All right, minus, here we have someone you can mentor and teach, or teach. This can be a friend, or just with players below your skill level in Discords, Reddit, etc. The purpose of this is to do a bunch of things. It's to reaffirm what you already know, to expose a hole in what you thought you knew, so a hole in your current knowledge, and to look at information from a different perspective. So I'll give you guys, like, the way I like came about this is I used to be, and I'll be quick with this. I used to be a lifeguard instructor for several years. I used to work in aquatic safety. I was a lifeguard instructor, and then I worked for the lifeguard company where I would teach other instructors on how to teach lifeguards. And then also, and then I would travel around the country. I'd go and audit water parks to make sure that they are doing the training correctly and doing all the safety aspects of the job correctly. So I would do that sort of thing. And the biggest thing I learned from doing that job is when I first started to teach other lifeguards, when I first just got to the instructor level, the biggest thing that I learned is that I don't actually know what I thought I knew. And so you've probably heard the expression before, the teacher learns more than the student. And this is so true. This is so true. And every time I've ever taught somebody something, I've learned something more. I learned something new. I feel like I learn more than the person I'm teaching. So I'll give you an example. So whenever I was doing that, there's a technique, you know, we just call it spinal extrication. It's when someone has a suspected spinal injury in the water, you need to be able to extract them from the water safely without damaging their spine. You need to be very delicate. So I was good at performing that skill as a lifeguard, as a team member. Whenever I'm actually having to perform the skill, I could do it. But then when it came time to where I had to learn how to teach somebody to do it, or I was given the task to teach somebody how to do it in training, I realized I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew how to do it. I didn't know why I was doing anything. I couldn't put a name to any of the techniques. I started to lose complete confidence that I could even perform the skill. And so what that did for me was expose a hole in my knowledge. And so this happens a lot when you're playing TFT or doing anything else. You think you know something really well, but then when you're teaching somebody and they challenge you by just asking a question, and you'll just be like, oh shit, I don't even know. So that's why I think having somebody to teach, whether that's a friend or just getting involved in Discord, stuff like that, can be really helpful. There's always a lot of people in those spaces, like in the Teamfight Tactics Discord, there's people in there always asking questions. You know, in my Discord's not super active, but a lot of times there'll be people in there asking questions or posting builds and stuff like that. So you can just like be involved in that. And remember, you know, not everyone's gonna be receptive to you trying to teach them something, stuff like that. But again, we're in here for us. You know, if you teach somebody, that's great. and that's amazing. And if they learn and take something away from that, it's amazing. But like, really, the goal of this is actually a selfish endeavor, because we are trying to grow from this situation. So remember, don't let your ego get damaged if somebody doesn't respect what you have to say, even if you're like higher ranked than them or whatever. Remember, we are just trying to get better at what we do. So if someone else learns by a byproduct, then that's just amazing. That's just you know, that's just seasoning on top. Okay, equal. Give proper respect to your current competition. A lot of people create this image of what they could be or who they think they are, but forget in order to get there, you have to best the ones at your current level at this time. Your opponents aren't truly your enemy. Your ego is your enemy. Now this really rings true for me a lot of the time, especially if I'm like stuck in master for a minute. So as I talked about earlier in the video, I took a break for like 2 months from playing, and when I came back, I was hard stuck in master, legitimately hard stuck in master. Now, this had a little bit due to the game balance being so horrendous that I couldn't even enjoy playing the game. But the other part of it is I had some flawed game fundamentals. And one thing that was holding me back, and this happens to me all the time, and I have to check myself, this is why it's in my training method, is I was so upset that I was playing a master that like my ego was damaged, that I was playing against players that I don't recognize their name when I'm used to just seeing the same players every single game. My ego was so damaged from that it made it difficult to learn. And I was only able to learn once I was like, no, I'm actually terrible. I'm actually terrible. I have no idea how to play stage 2 and 3. I'm just playing bad. And once I dropped my ego, I was able to learn. So that's the point of the system. So the main point of this entire system is to just drop your ego and learn. And you do that by doing all 3 of these things: plus, minus, and equal. All right, here is the last slide, guys. We're in the final stretch, and now I will say a lot of this stuff in here. I think this page, I think everyone can learn from this. Doesn't mean you have to do it exactly like I do, but I think this last page is a little bit more specific to me, and just like my needs as a player. And yeah, so I'll just give you guys, you know, I'll just be a little bit real for a second, but like my mental health is just the thing that holds me back the most. Whether that's just being tired or whatever, or that's being depressed, or this is the biggest thing that holds me back. And like day to day, like if I'm just not in the right headspace, it is not happening. I should just not play. It doesn't matter how much I practiced. It doesn't matter how good I am. It doesn't matter how well I understand the meta. I am just going to straight run it down. And so, yeah, you can tell if you're tilted or under rested or just not in the right mental state to climb. This happens for me all the time. For example, I just lost 150 LP. I lost Challenger. You know, I'm not sweating it or anything like that. That's not my goal. Is to just, you know, that's not my goal, is to sit there. My goal is to enjoy the game and to teach other people how to play the game, and to play at a high level is like a bonus. But I just lost 150 LP. I lost Challenger because I played under rested, and I had a headache. That was super foolish, and honestly, I felt a little. I was a little depressed as well at the time. I shouldn't have played. That was super foolish. I should have just taken a break and play tomorrow. That's what I'm doing today. I'm not playing today because I'm really not in the right mental state to play the game. I feel like I've lost a little bit of confidence, and I'll just play tomorrow whenever a new patch hits, and I'll gain a little bit of confidence in that. So if you're just not feeling it, man, just don't play. Like, you don't have to play every day. And this is something I struggle with a lot, is I try to just play every day. You know, I have to play this game kind of like a job. But like, if it's just not happening, just don't play or switch accounts, whatever. Just keep your mental strong, man. Save mental. The last part is believe in yourself. So this happens to a lot of players. This definitely has happened to me in the past. Doesn't really happen anymore, but definitely when I was making my first like climb up, this happened a lot. You got the rank that you are playing the way that you play. Don't buckle as soon as the player's borders are colors you haven't seen before. Like, you know, you get into your first diamond lobby, you get into your first master, you get into your first GM lobby for the first time, or recognizing a popular player's name. Don't buckle under that pressure. I mean, obviously you might, but it is fantastic to learn and change your play as you climb, but just make sure you're changing because of new info and not because you're scared. That is the important thing I want you to take away from this. Obviously, you're going to get nerves as you climb. You know, not everybody, but a lot of people will get nerves as you climb. When you start to recognize your favorite streamers in your lobby or whatever, you might play a little scared and a little different. But really the main takeaway is, even if you end up playing scared, try to get through that, and don't make changes to your game that are motivated by fear or by just feeling that you're not enough. Make sure those changes are because of practical reasons, because of new information, because of a better understanding of the meta. Make sure that those changes aren't because you are just scared, because a lot of people hit that wall, they hit that anxiety wall, and they just can't get past it because they start changing the way they play, start getting new, they start making up new realities of the game that don't exist just because they are not mentally prepared for the challenge, and they are not taking in that new info. So just keep strong, believe in yourself. You can get through it. All right, guys, that is it for the video. So in synopsis, we'll go back to the first slide. Guys, you just need to make sure you got to grind. You got to have a lot of time, whether that is just on the weekend or, you know, you need, if you have a lot of time, spend that time. If you don't, maximize the time that you have. You just need to maximize everything you have if you don't have a lot of time. Manage your time. I like to have a learning phase and a climbing phase. I think it's really important to not always have LP in the crosshairs. You're not always trying to climb LP. Sometimes you just need to be trying to get better, and LP is a byproduct. And then you can flip that where you're trying to gain LP and learning is a byproduct, you know. Some practical stuff. You need to know the meta every patch. Don't try to define it. Just learn what it is and play the meta, guys. I know that sucks, but this is a video about climbing, not having fun. And climbing is fun. Learn how to be strong each stage. This will benefit you. This is just really practical. This will benefit you, as I said, all the way up to even like high master. People have no idea how to play the game with a disadvantage. So learning how to play stage 2, 3, and 4 can be really, really, really important. Learning how to play with a disadvantage. Learn multiple play styles as metas will change all the time, especially beginning of sets. The game is not very balanced, and needing to learn those like more of those unfun play styles, I would consider them. And then mastering a play style to give you some consistency, and to give you something that like you are actually good at. So like, this is my meta, you know, like get something that you actually specialize in so you can really pop off when it's your time. And also gives you consistency through those patches where you're not quite as good at those patches. Mental, you know, I just talked about my training method. You know, my training method really is just designed to drop the ego. And the other parts here is just believe in yourself, and just take breaks when you need to take them. You don't always have to be playing. Recognize tilt, recognize when it's just not happening, and just take a break, play the next day, but be confident when you come back. All right, guys, that is it for the video. Hope you guys learned a lot. I put a lot of work into this video. I really believe in the stuff that I put here, but if it didn't help you, then that sucks. But really, this is what I do. This is what I do to get better, and I hope it helped you guys. So if you did, make sure to give it a like. Comment down below if you guys have any questions or any comments about anything. I'd be happy to answer questions about to clarify anything in this PowerPoint presentation, in this video that maybe you didn't quite understand. I'd be happy to clarify any of that stuff, or just respond to comments. I do read all my comments and respond to them as long as they're if they warrant a response. And if you want more of me, I stream at twitch.tv/TFT. I stream on weekdays, there 4 to 5 days a week usually. And then I post pretty much every day at twitter.com/TFT, so you can catch me there if you want to support me there as well. So that's it, guys. Appreciate all of you. I hope you have a fantastic day, fantastic night, and wherever you are, I just hope you're doing well. See ya. Bye.